got a crazy-ass true story to tell. It could be funny or thrilling or creepy as hell. And when you speak, surely none will make a sound. And the world's going breathless when your true story comes around.
All right, welcome back to Your Best True Story Podcast, episode 16. Freddie, we are successfully squeezing in one more episode before the end of June here.
Extra bonus.
Yep. So, yeah, we gotta get this in because otherwise there's actually only been one episode with stories called in this month. So we gotta get 4 new stories in there just to give people more options to vote for. It'd be too easy for somebody to win from that one episode if we don't have more stories.
Yeah,
so
can't let that slide.
Yep. So just a reminder, speaking of the voting, the way this works is starting July 1st and going to the 7th. If you go to the Your Best True Story podcast website, yourbesttruestory.com, you can actually vote for your favorite story from the prior month, and then that person will win $250 and be invited on the show to have a one-on-one interview, which last episode was with Rob Levchik.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, what do you any residual thoughts from that interview? I thought it went pretty well. Rob's an interesting guy.
Oh no, he's awesome. I'd love to talk with him again. He's we're on the same wavelength.
Yep. And he's got a great show that we encourage everybody to check out as well. And then also, before we get into the calls, I was just going to mention, if you can get a chance, if you like the show, please do remember to leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast app you listen to, because that does help us to get exposure and counteracts the people that hate our guts.
There are a couple.
Yep. So it helps to get some positive reviews in there. And let's see. So the only other thing I was going to mention before we jump into the calls is just to give a little current event talk. Did you watch the debate, Freddie?
I've seen clips here and there.
Well, the Republic is fine.
It seems that way.
Yeah, we've got, out of 350 million people, obviously the 2 best choices to lead the country.
Yeah, it got honed down through a rigorous process, and, finally the cream rises to the top.
So if that doesn't get you fired up for the election, nothing will.
I'm actually very excited to see how this plays out. We can hopefully get some twists and turns that'll shock and awe.
Yep, we can only hope. And speaking of shock and awe, we have got, which I am super excited about, Freddie, the last call. I saved it for last, but it is our first Dogman encounter call.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I like dogs.
Yeah. So, but it's a dog and a man combined into one creature. So
I don't know. I don't know how to proceed.
We'll get you warmed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then since that'll be the last call, we can get your thoughts on Dogman after that. And so to get things started, we've got 4 calls, and our first call, it's a little more, nothing paranormal really going on with it or anything too wacky. But I don't want to give away too much about it, but I'm just going to ask you, Freddie, if you had to guess how many people around the country every year are injured by deer and moose, what would your number be for the United States once a year? How many people?
Now, before I give my answer, does that include car wrecks with those deer or moose?
Yeah.
Okay, so then
people
it
injuries,
would be 1.35 million.
Wow. That's a lot. Now it seems anticlimactic. It's only 59,000 a year.
What?
Wow, you must imagine people are just getting fucked up by deer.
It's a bloodbath out there, Jim.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. 1.35 million. No, only just a meager 59,000, which I thought was.
I think Stairs takes out way more people.
Yeah, well, it could
than
be.
that.
Could be. Well, so our first call is from anonymous guy in Alaska. And I will just go ahead and not give away more of the story, but just go ahead and play it and get your thoughts.
I wanted to call in a real quick story that some people might find maybe disturbing or offensive or something, but to me it's great, and so I apologize up front if it disturbs anybody, but I grew up outside of Anchorage, Alaska, and like a lot of people in those parts, we didn't have a lot of money. It was for a good part of my childhood, just me and my mom in our mobile home, but then eventually she met this guy named Dale who, unfortunately, and she even admits now it was a mistake and everything, and my mother's a good woman, but she got in with this guy named Dale who, for lack of a better term, was a complete piece of shit. This guy was mean and drunk, and when he wasn't drunk, he was just hungover and mean, and he was an all-around dick. He was supposed to be a plumber, but he was just like a fat piece of shit that hung out at the bars in Anchorage and then would come home and honestly knock my mom and me around some, to the point where eventually, by the time I was like 10 years old, I hated his guts. And I don't, throughout the rest of my life, I don't wish ill will on anyone. And but you got to picture how much of a piece of shit Dale really was. Like, besides for not doing anything productive, he was the kind of asshole that people in Alaska hate because he completely disrespects nature as well. He was one of the guys that would just kill animals for fun, and he used to take me out and force me to shoot at like prairie dogs and eagles and even deer and a couple moose, and he wouldn't do it. I actually do hunt occasionally now to get food, and to use the food, but Dale wouldn't do that. He would just be drunk and shoot a freaking gorgeous moose and kill it and leave it there just to rot and waste the meat. So anyway, that kind of plays back into the story, because if you don't know much about Alaskan bull moose, they are huge. Most people have no concept of really how big they are. Their backs can be 6 feet tall, and I mean that's the top of their back being even with a 6 foot tall man, not counting the head and the rack and all of that. They can weigh about 1,500 pounds, and even the bull moose racks can weigh like 80 pounds. There's huge, massive animals, and I think there's statistics of about 500, maybe 1,000 people a year in Alaska having wrecks with moose. And since they're so big, it can really fuck up a car or a truck. And so when I'm a 10-year-old boy hating Dale's guts, I remember crying one night after he'd made me shoot some sort of animal and wishing him dead. And it was like the first part of December. We were coming up on Christmas, and I remember praying that something would happen to him so we wouldn't have to spend Christmas with him. And then, lo and behold, in the first week of December, when the bull moose are starting to shed their huge antlers anyway, Dale's driving home drunk from the bar and probably going to beat on me and my mom that night. And he's driving home in his piece of shit, like 1970s Chevy truck that's literally almost got the windshield already falling out of it. And dumbass Dale ends up running into this huge moose that was nicknamed Shaquille O'Neal around that area. And the moose was huge, massive bull moose, easily 6 feet tall and 1,500 pounds. And he runs right into it on the highway. But the moose, Shaquille O'Neal, goes through rolls off the hood through the windshield, and his antler, the one side of his rack, basically decapitates Dale and sticks in the truck, in the car seat, the truck seat, almost completely slicing Dale's head off. But then Shaquille O'Neal just keeps on going, sort of rolls off of the truck and runs off into the woods, and Dale's truck completely wrecks with his head falling off, thank God. And the great thing about it was Shaquille O'Neal, the moose, he was still around that area for a couple of years after that, completely unharmed. He is so damn big, hitting the truck didn't even really faze him. But thank God we got rid of Dale. And so, I don't know. It's a feel-good story to me. Sorry if it offends anybody else.
So that is an example of the secret in action, manifestation, Freddie. That's how it can be used for the good. It is you create a vision board of fat, drunk stepdads that you want decapitated by moose. And then it happens.
I see the logic behind the 10-year-old's manifestations.
Yeah.
Not bad.
That's a rough way. Well, I mean, it's probably a good way to go. It would be quick.
Oh, for Dale?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
just
a lot worse ways.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's quick, semi-painless if you actually got completely decapitated. How long does the brain have oxygen for? What, like maybe 30 seconds probably?
Is it that long?
I think so.
Your head gets chopped off?
Yeah, I think it's pretty, good amount
That'd
of time.
That'd be a weird 30 seconds. Where
you'd probably have like a ton of adrenaline kicking in, and so it would be like dreamy at the same time.
Have you ever seen, I have actually thought about that before with guillotines, like in France when they used to chop everybody's head off.
Yep.
And then it was so quick and perfect, the slice that the head would just fall in the basket and be looking back up. And they would say they would blink and be looking around.
Well, you'd have to have at least some, energy left in there to be able to react and see. And you can't really, maybe you can make gurgling noises, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's at least 30 seconds, if I had to say that, you got to recap some stuff or be like, well,
so what do you think Dale recapped? What are your overall thoughts on Dale's decapitation? And moose murder in general.
It doesn't sound like there's too much going on upstairs with Dale, so he's probably just swearing. It's some kind of probably some cursive language going on and some blaming.
Yeah. And it is true. I don't think people get how big moose are. We actually, one of the last backpacking trips I went on a few years ago in Canada. We saw a full-grown bull moose, and those things are humongous. And you can pull up videos where they are, when they're walking next to cars on the road, their knees are basically on level with the top of the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've yet to experience a full moose here in Florida.
Yeah.
But
I don't think your odds are good.
Well,
it did actually, that story remind me when I first moved out to Montana, literally the first hike I went on by myself, just me and my black lab, who was probably only 9 months old, maybe a year old at that time. We were hiking. We went up to Big Sky, Montana, which in the summertime, it's a ski resort, but in the summertime, it's completely, nothing's going on up there, but it's gorgeous mountains and you can hike and stuff. And me and my dog were coming down off of this ridge. And this is literally the first hike I've been on in the mountains like this in my life, basically. And so me and my dog are trucking down the mountain and having a blast, and there's all these sort of felled trees laying, periodically. So I'd have to jump up on a tree. Me and my dog would jump up on the tree as we were walking down, then jump down off of the tree log, basically, and continue on down the mountain, sort of like steps, but with the sections of no trees. And then on one of these trees, when I jump up and my dog Jake jumps up on the tree to jump down on the other side, right as we hit the top of the log, this juvenile, it must have been a juvenile moose because it wasn't as big, was sleeping, directly under like the crevice.
So you leap directly on its back?
No, we leapt on the log.
Rode it into town?
The juvenile moose jumped up, looked at us, and it was almost like a cartoon. Me freaked out, my dog freaked out, the moose freaked out, and for a split second, probably like 1 or 2 seconds, we're all just looking at each other like, what the fuck is going on?
Did you do the air running with your legs going but not going anywhere, but making some...
No, I was just completely like, holy shit, this is a moose. And the moose eventually, then, well, not eventually, after like 2 seconds, just turns and bolts off into the woods. And then like a full 3 seconds later, my dog, trying to be tough, is like, rawr.
Yeah, get lost.
But overall, like I can't imagine if it had been a full grown moose, but I think moose are pretty, obviously they don't go out of their way to mess with humans or anything, but just the sheer size of them. I think if you happen to accidentally piss one off, like if that had been a full-grown bull moose and we had jumped completely over the log onto his back, that thing might have fucked us up.
Those racks are insane looking, especially the ones with all the pointy ends on them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then to see them fight is nuts.
Yeah.
Like they just throw each other around.
Yep.
Like thousands of pounds just getting hurled and smashing into each other. Like
that's another a good genre video to pull up sometimes is bighorn sheep battling.
Oh, those, the sound it makes when their skulls
that will just
it's like thunder.
Yep, give you a headache. Just
and then they do that fighting stuff on the side of cliffs.
Yeah. Yep.
Like insanely small, like little rocks, and they're like, you know what?
Ledges.
Take this. Clack.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing animal stories potentially out there. And so if you've got any animal stories, we need to encourage people to call in more stories, Freddie. So anybody who has headbutted a bighorn sheep or had any fought off a grizzly bear, definitely call those in, because those would be great stories to hear. And now moving on to caller 2, let me see. We're definitely switching gears from moose call to horrible Craigslist ad stories.
All right.
Now, have you, you know what Craigslist is, right?
I remember what Craigslist is.
Yeah, I was actually kind of shocked.
Back in the MySpace days.
Yeah, and it still apparently exists.
What?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah, I don't know who is actually.
So people are putting ads on Craigslist today, and
I think
other people are looking at those ads on Craigslist today and going and meeting.
And thinking it's a good idea to meet up, which, like, it has never seemed like a good idea to me to meet up with anybody on Craigslist. But, like, I did not check, but I assume it still exists. But Craigslist has got a history of many bizarre crimes associated with it. And I was did pull up on ranker.com the number of crimes associated with Craigslist. And it is at this point at least linked to 330 violent crimes, but it seems like, oh wait, no, that's a year. Yeah. So it's 330
so wait,
violent
let me get
crimes
this what you're saying here. There is some sort of forum on the internet where you don't have to verify yourself, and then random strangers are agreeing to meet in random locations, and then shit goes down?
Yes, believe it or not.
What?
There are some unfortunate occurrences that happen. I'm going to read a few of the summaries. These are just you can actually pull these up and read in more detail. Some of them are so graphic that I don't want to actually go into it, but I'll just read you the ranker.com headlines, summaries for worst.
It's got to be old people that are doing this at this point.
Are the ones killing everybody?
Well, the ones that are
using
killing and being killed because I
Well,
don't
that's
think
the-
the new generation
yeah.
even knows about Craigslist.
Yeah, that's what I think is really fascinating about Craigslist is there's both sides. The killers are using both sides. They both post the ads and they show up to the ads. So it's just basically like a forum to get people trying to kill each other together.
Old people trying to kill each other.
Old people at this point. So here are some of the headlines. Man shoots, kills thief who targeted him on Craigslist.
Old man.
And these are all real, like, documented crimes that have
Did it
occurred.
say old man kills old thief?
Yeah. Michigan man attacked after responding to fake Craigslist ad. Baseball star sexually assaults Craigslist workers. Husband and wife team murder an eager Craigslist buyer. Woman robbed in concert tickets deal gone bad. Craigslist killer stabs woman 89 times. Man tortures dogs he bought on Craigslist. Boston University medical student uses Craigslist for dating and murder. I think I'd actually heard about that one before. Teen slays Craigslist nanny. Man rapes maid that he found on Craigslist. Man shot and killed while trying to buy an ATV on Craigslist. Man murdered in Craigslist robbery gone wrong. You get the idea. There's a few. So
there's some commerce taking place on Craigslist, and there's probably a 50% chance that you end up dead.
yeah, I think it's your odds of dying in Craigslist are slightly higher than being killed by a moose. And so our next story is from a woman in Baton Rouge, or at least she lived in Baton Rouge at the time of the story, named Manda. And she has got a pretty freaky Craigslist story. So here we go. Manda from Baton Rouge, take it away.
Hey y'all, my name's Amanda, and I just wanted to tell you a quick story to always trust your instincts. So around the end of 2003, beginning of 2004, I was living in Baton Rouge, just on the outskirts of town, and it was just before Christmas, and I had decided to get a last-minute additional gift for my boyfriend Buddy, which was going to be like one of those deep freeze coolers, the big ones that you keep outside in your garage. And Buddy was a big outdoorsman and liked to fish and hunt gators and different things. So he liked to store meat, and I thought that'd be a real special gift for him. So I had a girlfriend that had told me that I could find one quickly on Craigslist, which this was actually the first time I'd ever heard about Craigslist, but I went on it and I found a deep freeze cooler that somebody was advertising for sale, and the ad looked like you'd expect. It was a Frigidaire, and it was a few $100s, said it was in real good shape and everything. So I called the man, and I didn't at first get any strange vibes asking him about the deep freeze cooler until he kept on insisting that I should come later in the evening to get it, to look at it, like after 9 p.m. or so, because I wanted to go right after work when it would still be daylight. And he kept on making excuses that he was going to have guests over earlier, which didn't really make a lot of sense, that they would come earlier but then leave before in the evening, So that was a little weird to me, but eventually I just agreed that I would come about 9:30. And I would look at the cooler, and if it looked good, I would pay him the $350 for it or whatever he wanted. And so I drive out there into the suburb of Baton Rouge, and it's a normal-looking house, nothing too strange about it or spooky. But when I drive up, then the garage doors are already open. I can see the deep freeze cooler there in the garage, and he hasn't come out yet. So I leave my car running and get out and go over, and the headlights are kind of shining on the deep freeze cooler, and I'm looking at it kind of a couple feet into his garage looking at it. And then he comes out and introduces himself. And the way he looked at me was just too intense, too focused, if that makes any sense at all. He sort of looked like a nerdy, kind of like Ned Flanders and The Simpsons, that kind of vibe. He had glasses and brown hair and a silly little brown mustache, and didn't seem intimidating. You probably wouldn't even notice him if you passed him on the street, but the way he looked at me was just like he was a cat watching a mouse. And I was trying to talk to him about the cooler, and it seemed like that didn't interest him that much, and he just wanted every part of the conversation was about him trying to invite me into the house to have some juice or a beer or something I would say about the cooler, then that would remind him he had pictures of other coolers or ridiculous things that he could show me if I just walked in. So all my alarm bells are starting to ring, and after about 10 minutes, I just say, you know what, sir, I appreciate your time, but I don't think this is going to work out for me. I think I'm going to keep looking for, and I think I made an excuse saying I needed a bigger freezer or something like that. And then I went and jumped back in my car, and I could tell by his face he was really internally frustrated with me, even though he didn't want to say anything or let me see that. It looked like he was steaming inside. And so I get in my car, drive off, and I think it was 2 months later, there is an arrest in Baton Rouge of a serial killer that you can actually pull up information on him. And I'm not going to go into all of it because it is pretty gruesome. But his name was Sean Vincent Gillis, and I am 99% sure that that is the man that I went to his house and looked at that deep freezer cooler. And if you look up what he did to women, it is too horrific for me to talk about it, but I just can't imagine on a lighter note if I had actually somehow bought that cooler from him and not actually been hacked to bits, I wouldn't want to know what he had stored in there before, because it is just awful. He is the devil incarnate, and that is my story on to always trust your instincts and maybe not even use Craigslist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that guy, but I looked it up, and if that really was him, she avoided, being, having some very bad things happen to her.
She does know this is 2020 somethings, right? Like, no single female should be driving out into the middle of...
Well, no, that was 2003.
Oh, okay.
When the story took place.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna
20
say,
years ago.
I'm like... Yeah, 20 years ago, maybe that would make more sense.
Yeah, that's, and I do remember when people were using Craigslist more, that, it just always shocked me that anyone was comfortable just driving, out to some remote location to meet somebody.
Well, at that point, Craigslist was, new. Yeah. And it was better than the other alternative, which was the newspaper ads. Yeah. Which was just, a static version of Craigslist, So, I could see when back then, this is the new and updated version. Yeah. And, but now.
That guy that she mentioned, the Sean Vincent Gillis, I pulled him up, and, he was, he got arrested in 2004, but it killed, I think, 9 women around Baton Rouge, and,
he lured them all with a freezer?
No. He would, different ways, but it was almost like he was almost like Jack the Ripper in the way that he would just all the hacking up and sort of hunting them down. It says that Gillis once claimed he began killing because of stress. This was his way to relieve stress in his life. Was he would hunt people, apparently. And so yeah, have you ever had a close call with any creepy scenarios like that, Freddie?
No, I've survived all of my purchases from the internet.
Yeah. I would love to hear, this is another genre that I would think, especially with, because it always amazes me that people don't have more horrific stories off of like dating websites and meeting up and apps and stuff. But like I would hope and encourage anybody out there with crazy Craigslist ad stories that have happened to them, or dating off of Tinder, or any of the online stuff where you're actually meeting up with then another human being, either even if scary or funny. Those would be great calls to get more of.
It's interesting because technology has given us the ability to connect more. And so now, it does track, supposedly, the information of each party that can then be, reviewed by a third party after the fact.
Yeah.
But you do have now, you just order a stranger to come and pick you up in their car.
Yeah. Wasn't there recently?
At your house.
Yeah, I think there was. It might have been in Canada, but I think there was somebody, a guy that got arrested he was an Uber driver that was killing people. He would selectively take some of them.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The sprees should be much shorter now because
they got caught. Yeah.
You're only getting one or two before they're like, hey, there's two people you've driven that didn't make it home.
Yeah.
And now we know where to look because of your license plate, all the road cameras. Like, you can't really get away with much.
Yeah, whereas Craigslist is definitely more anonymous.
Back then, that was probably the phone calls made on a landline to some other landline, and, it's so much harder to put the data together now. I mean, you're almost at some point sort of protected by the data, or have a feeling of, you can make a call as you're in the situation. It's different dynamics going on.
That's what, I would also like to hear people's catfish stories from dating, or if you've shown up. Like, I had one experience like that where I haven't used dating sites or apps a ton, and part of the reason why is because one of the dates that I did show up on, I swear she was easily 100 pounds heavier than what had been portrayed in all the photos. And it's just I can't imagine the people that do it regularly, like the degree of crazy and inaccurate and different from what you expected scenarios.
Well, especially with the filters these days.
You can't even,
that's on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
To catfishing, just a bad picture, bad lighting, or, good lighting.
Yeah.
Versus that's literally not your nose.
Yeah. Well, that would be, So anybody out there that has got any crazy, funny, creepy, entertaining stories, from any of that stuff, dating apps, meeting up with people, or Craigslist ads, or anything else, like that, please do call it in. And for anybody, that's got a story, in the show notes is the quickest way to do it. You can actually just click on our SpeakPipe link from the show note and record it immediately over your phone, and it comes right to us. So quick and easy, and we will get it on the air, and then you might even have the chance to win $250. Now, Freddie, what do you think the subject of our third call is, if you had to guess, based on moose decapitation and Craigslist serial killer?
I'm going to go with old school frat party shenanigans.
No, but I like that your instinct is that it's completely different, because it is. There's no pattern whatsoever. And I'm not going to give too much away from this story either, but it's a guy named Terry calling in a story that I'm just going to call a Mexican mystery. And it's a little long. So just prepare yourself. He takes a little while to get there, but, in the end, it is interesting what the solution to the mystery turned out to be. So here we go. Terry, take it away with your Mexican mystery story.
Honey, take a look at this. Is this thing recording? Okay. Yeah, hi, my name's Terry, but my story's about a guy named John, my best friend from, about the time I was 14 until the time that, I'll get to that, I guess. So John and I lived in Southern California at the time, right near the border, right across from Tijuana. Both our families had been there for all our lives, but we didn't meet until we started going to the same high school. And we got along really well. He was an easygoing kid like me, always happy, always smiling. And we would go to parties together, and there was never any question about that we were going to hang out on the weekends. It was just sort of became an unspoken thing right off the bat. We both loved action movies. I guess what guy doesn't? And our parents went in the same circles socially, so we got to hang out a lot even when we weren't at school. And when we got a little bit older, 17, 18, we started getting a little more trust for our parents. They would give us the green light to go down into Tijuana, as long as we didn't mess that up or anything, which we never did, or at least we never told them we did. We had a couple of exciting adventures down there, but mostly it was just harmless kid fun. Go down, you hang out, and drink a little bit too much probably, and then come back in time to sober up a little bit and put on your responsible face for your parents, so you get to go back to Tijuana next time there's a party down there or something. Anyway, so me and John, we go down there one weekend when we're probably 18 or 19, so we were old enough to be considered adults. And this is when Tijuana was a lot safer than it is now. There's always been gangs and drug problems down there, but nothing like it is today. I mean, obviously you could send your kids down there for the weekend by themselves, 18-year-old kids, and they'd be fine, as we were many, many times. We went down there a lot. We love it down there. But it's one weekend we go down there. It's one particular weekend with our friend. His name's Mike. And we see these three young Mexican women. They're making eyes at us and giggling. And Mike spoke a little bit of Spanish because his dad worked for the Border Patrol, so he had a chance to learn it growing up, not just at school. And John and I we lived near the border, but we didn't have much exposure to it other than a couple of years in high school. We just need the basics. So we'd like to go up to these girls and introduce us. And anyway, I guess the point of the meeting is that one of those girls was named Eliza, and the other two don't really factor into this story. But Eliza was a real red-hot firecracker of a human being. I mean, she was full of life and always a life at the party everywhere she went, and always laughing, always smiling, and she just brought light to her room. And her and my best buddy John hit it off without even talking to each other, and he spoke very, very broken Spanish. But they didn't even meet that. It was obvious to everybody around right away what the connection was. And that started a long series of trips down across the border. Mostly me and John. By the time Mike didn't go, Mike can always go with us. So me and John would go down there, and we'd always, as soon as we crossed, Eliza would be waiting for him. And so I go down sort of like his right-hand man, and we'd hang out, we'd have adventures. She introduced us to all her friends, took us to her grandma's home, a real sweet lady. That was a nice small home, not too far from the beach, so we did a lot of surfing, a lot of hanging out. spent a couple of really great summers down there. And about that time, my job was picking up, and I was working a lot more and doing office work, trying to pay my way through college, mostly successfully. So John starts taking most of those trips down there solo, starts going down there to see Eliza and hang out. And one day, maybe I was about 20 or 21, I get a call from him saying that he's staying down there, that he's going to marry Eliza and going to start a life down there. That her dad could get him some work, some good work, pay him just as good as a job back across our side of the border could pay. And I was real sad at the time. I mean, he's my best buddy. And that was the last time I talked to him. I tried calling back from the number he called me on, and some older Spanish woman picked up who didn't speak a word of English, so I didn't get very far there. Even using John's and Eliza's name, she didn't seem to know what I was talking about. We didn't have cell phones back then, so there was no way for me to get in contact. I drove down there a couple of times by myself on a Saturday when I didn't have work or school, and I went to all the old huts that me and him and Eliza's crew would hang out at, and the beach, and even her grandma's house wasn't the same woman that lived there. It was a new family. So him and Eliza and the grandma or whoever had apparently just disappeared. And I tried talking to local authorities about it, just asking questions. I didn't have any accusations to make. I mean, I don't know if they were kidnapped or just moved or anything. And eventually I just kind of came to the conclusion that my buddy had moved on, that John had, married Eliza, maybe, hopefully, and they were happy together. And now as an older adult, you realize that people move apart over time. Not that you break the friendship or something bad happens, that you just move your separate ways, you go on with your separate lives. And I think that's what happened early for John. Not me so much. I mean, I was still in college for another couple of years and still working. I had a family now, and I'm very happy. But I always wondered what happened to my buddy down there. And then one day, about 5 years ago, he calls me out of the blue. And I don't know how he had my number. It had changed a couple of times over the years. I mean, it must have been 18, 20 something years. So he calls me, and it's not really a deep conversation. I mean, we do some basic scratch of the surface, how you doing, how you been kind of stuff, but he gets right to the point, and he wants me to come down and meet his family. He's got 2 young kids with Eliza. I'm surprised to find out and happy to find out that they're still together. And 2 young kids he wants me to come meet, says he got a place down there, and he's been thinking a lot about me lately for some reason. And I don't have to drive. He'll buy me a plane ticket, which isn't too expensive, but it was still a really nice gesture, which means he must be doing all right. By this time, I had taken over my dad's business, who had retired, and so I was doing the construction business, and I was doing mostly okay by myself, paying bills and anyway to keep this moving. He and Eliza picked me up from the airport, and they had a driver. They worked during the drive-in, so we're getting this really big black SUV, which is really nice. Kind of like doesn't look like much on the outside, but the inside was really luxury, decked out. We had champagne and laughed. It was, for a little while there, it was almost like old times. We had a great conversation. We just fell right back into being kind of the 3 amigos there. So we're driving, we're passing all of these really run-down houses as we head towards the coast. And I'm wondering how John and Eliza can afford, to have a driver in a car like this if they live in this area. And I didn't want to bring it up and be rude right away. I planned to ask him about it later because it was really curious. And he was very obviously not. He was dancing around the issue of money. We talked a little bit about jobs, but he avoided it very, very direct. He directly avoided it, I guess. And eventually we passed these rundown homes, and we head out. We see the ocean, and there's this mansion on a cliff. And we pull into this big, swooping driveway, one of those big wraparound things. And there's a couple of other really fancy sports cars out there. And there's some workers out tending the garden. Somebody's cleaning the tires of some kind of sports car, maybe a Ferrari or something. And we pull up, and the driver lets us out of the car. And John says, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think it's a beautiful house, and I'm wondering if it belongs to somebody he knows." And then his kids come running out, really, really beautiful, young little boy and girl, maybe 4 or 6 years old. And so he's living in this big 10-bedroom mansion on a cliff top in Mexico. And it was shocking, to say the least. And we go in, and, I'm trying to keep my composure. I'm trying not to crack a breath and just ask him, "What the hell, man? How did you get all this?" And so anyway, I just was rambling on it. But we have a meal. We do all the catching up friend stuff. We're not very deep conversation, like I said earlier. And Eliza excuses herself to take the kids to a nearby swimming pool. And he says, after they leave, it's just me and John. And John says that, they're going to be building their own pool, but they haven't got around to it yet. And that's when his facade kind of cracks a little bit. He lets his mask slip, I guess, and he looks a little scared. And I couldn't quite tell that's what was going on at first. But we're sitting on his outside patio, and there's nobody else around. And he starts staring at his glass. He is having a, what do they call it when you mix champagne and orange juice? Is that a screwdriver? Anyway, he starts twirling the stem of his glass, this fancy goblet thing. It probably cost more than my car. And he's staring at it. And he just starts to hint that not everything is okay. He starts to ask questions about what my life is like back in California, and he seems genuinely happy that I'm living a good life, and he's kind of wondering out loud if he could make it work by going back to the States, almost kind of like an escape from what he was hinting at. But again, he didn't say anything directly. His voice was getting a little shaky, and he kind of wiped his nose a couple times like he was sniffling, but he didn't start crying or anything. And I'd never really seen John like that even back in the day. He was always really happy-go-lucky, but it seemed in that moment that a great weight had settled upon his shoulders, something that he had been carrying for a long time. And that's when I noticed that off in the corner that there was a dude there over by standing just far enough away that he couldn't hear us, but this security guard looking fella was over by a palm tree with his hands crossed in front of his belt, and he was armed, or just with a sidearm, and he had an earpiece and these big aviator sunglasses on, and he was just watching us. This Mexican security guard was just kind of keeping his eye on us, and every once in a while John's eyes would flick up to him and then go back to his glass while he twirled his glass. It's odd, but I didn't notice it at first, and it's odd that John paid him so much attention during our conversation after he noticed that I saw him over there. And as soon as he noticed that I saw him, John he straightened up a little bit, and he stopped kind of being so hang-dog, and he kind of dropped that whole train of thought, didn't bring up, he switched gears, basically. He became almost the same John that I remember, but maybe a little bit too forced, and mentioned how good business was, and Eliza's father had got him into the family business. And I said I was trying to pick up on his hints, and I told him he'd come visit me by himself if he wanted to, or with his kids, and even with Eliza too. And he said, no, she would never do that. She would never leave. And I can't leave her. And so I stayed down there for another day, and we just we never talked about anything serious again. It was all very, just very surfacey. And he'd pay for my flight back. It was a beautiful visit as far as the scenery goes. The food was excellent, and everybody was nice enough. And that was 5 years ago, and I never heard from him again. I did some digging a little bit later, and it turns out her dad was a top member of the Sinaloa cartel, and he had himself set up there on the coast where he ran a lot of his operations from, and his daughter had been involved in the operations since she was a teenager. She would recruit American guys, get them to do various jobs for the organization, mostly driving stuff across the border, hidden in their vehicles. And I got the feeling later that maybe John had been doing that the whole time. All of his trips down there, because he went a lot more than I did after we started heading out with Eliza. And he had this big old truck with the side panels that I think he probably could have put a good amount of product, I guess, in there. And so maybe that's how it started. But they were genuinely in love, and there's no denying that. So whoever Eliza worked with before John, or even while she was with John, she obviously didn't feel the same way about them because they ended up getting married. And I tried to look up information on him, on John lately, and I can't find anything. He vanished for real. And I'm not going back to that house, obviously, because if I push too much, I got a family now. I can't do anything for him. He's a grown man. I just hope he's still okay and that he's still happy. I hope he gets out. Really. But I don't know how you escape a situation like that if that's really what it was. But yeah, how can it not be with her dad being who he is? Anyway, yeah, that's a crazy story, and that's the biggest coincidence. Not really a coincidence, but that's the wildest story that I can think of for your podcast.
Those are some golden handcuffs that guy has married his way into, Freddie.
Yeah, that's quite a situation. I don't know. I kind of feel bad for the other guy because you don't just drop somebody like that. And then why would you pick it back up, though,
Yeah, maybe it was they wouldn't allow him to continue his friendships, like once he bought into the whole idea of working with the cartel.
Yeah. But, I mean, he wouldn't, I don't know. That's putting your friends at danger. Like, if I decided...
Well, they probably trusted him at that point, since he'd been there for 20 years. Maybe he's got
But what is that? I don't know. So I go to Mexico and I marry a drug lord's daughter and stuff. And so we don't talk. And then 10 years later, I call you and be like, hey, Jim, get on down here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm really doing you a favor.
No, you'd probably be, trying to swap places with me.
Right.
Yeah, put a Freddy wig on my head and you run to the airport.
Well, that would definitely be my, because obviously, we hadn't had the relationship. And, if I was in California, and there's some things that, I don't know, that guy's lucky to get out of there. Yeah. Because... if it was a real relationship, he probably would have made contact at some other point in time and, just getting him down there. What are they is this guy good? Yeah. No? Or we're sending him back? Oh, okay.
Well, they might have they might have stuffed a bunch of cocaine in his luggage.
Probably.
Yeah, and he never was aware of it.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah. That makes more sense. Not that he's trying to escape, that he's like, who do you know that we can get to come over here? Yeah. And then you can have dinner with while we load his luggage with stuff.
Yeah. That guy's still wondering why cocaine keeps falling out of his underwear and stuff.
Yeah.
At times he's like, I'll get where this is coming from.
Exactly.
What, the thing that jumped out to me, I don't keep up a lot with what's going on in Mexico, but believe it or not, I've always got in the back of my mind because I think shit is we have no concept of how crazy shit is getting down there. They just had their presidential election at the start of June. And did you read about or see in the news the violence leading up to the election?
Yeah, I saw that president lady, throughout the different elections and different seats, there was 37 of them that got assassinated and stuff. But that's not really that many in the grand scheme of, how many people
compared to
can get off.
Moose decapitations.
Right, yeah. When you got 1.35 million
people
moose encounter, decapitations or accidents a year.
What's 37 congressmen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, it's, the whole cartel, CIA.
Well, I think, I mean, it's all blurry-ish. Do you like
get blurred?
Yeah, I love the Sicario movies.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that deals with that to a degree, but I mean, obviously, we're probably funding 90% of this chaos down there. But I can't imagine living in that where you're. But then again. When you live in that, when we've traveled internationally or stuff it's probably not as dangerous for the people living there because they know how to navigate it. It's only dangerous for if you're purposely kind of going against the flow.
That could be true. I mean,
by running for office.
I used to have a friend who was a DEA agent, and he had some stories about some of his excursions in some of these countries where literally people got lined up on the street outside of the hotel where him and his partner were staying and getting their arms chainsawed off as they made their exit through a back window out the door to try and, get out because they were trying to get information on, they knew somebody was here that shouldn't be here. And he's literally describing, the sounds of that happening outside his window as they're grabbing their stuff. And
that's the bizarre scenarios you can get into going anywhere overseas, but especially South America, Mexico, I think I have both of us have been to South America a couple different times on different trips, and this didn't happen to me, but a buddy of mine that went to Colombia one time has a story of where he was in a bar and just drinking, was the only gringo in the bar, though, so obviously kind of stood out. And a guy walked over to him and was offered to sell him cocaine. And he said he normally didn't do cocaine, but he is in Colombia, so it seemed like something he should maybe try. So he's like, yeah, sure, what's the harm? And the guy's like, well, meet me in the bathroom. Yeah, I can't give it to you right here. So my buddy is thinking, yeah, okay, this makes sense. He walks into the bathroom a couple minutes later following this guy, thinking he's about to buy cocaine, and the bathroom door swings shut behind him. The guy that he was going to buy the cocaine from is at the other end of the bathroom and looks obviously like something's up. And so the American dude turns around to see two cops on either side of the bathroom door, just staring at him, uniformed police officer. So obviously this whole thing was just a setup to entrap him.
Yeah.
And so he has got, and so imagine you're in a foreign country, don't know anyone, don't have any resources, traveling by yourself. And all of a sudden you realize you're in a situation where you're basically have committed a felony and you've been caught or being set up for it. Right. And so he is freaking terrified. The cops take him out of the bar, take him to another location where they basically start to shake him down and say, hey, you're going to do one of two things, get us X amount of dollars. And I can't remember. It wasn't that much, but it was either a few $100 or $1,000. Or they're saying they're basically going to kill him.
Oh.
And so he's got those choices. And somehow this guy thought fast enough on his feet to say, and they had taken his, no, that was it. They were asking for his passport, but somehow he kept, I think he had his passport hidden on him or something, and they didn't find it. So he said his passport was back at his hotel room. And they need to go back to his hotel room to get his passport. And he was luckily staying on more of what you'd describe as a motel rather than a hotel. So as ground level, this guy, and I don't know if you described it as balls or just being terrified, but the cops don't want to go into his room with him for obvious implications. They don't want to be seen going into the guy's hotel room. So they stay parked outside in their cop car, and he goes into his motel room supposedly to grab the passport, which they're going to take from him, and then they're going to figure out a way for them to continue the extortion for him to get them the several $1,000s so he won't be murdered.
Yeah.
And he said the scariest, 30 seconds, minute of his life was in that room debating if he would go back out and get in the cop car and hope things worked out to the best, or if he would jump out the back window of the room and try to run. And that's what he did. He threw as much shit as he could in one bag and was out the back window and into an alleyway and running within a minute before they figured out to come in. He said he hopped in a cab, raced to the airport, and jumped on the literal first flight he could get, which took him to Nicaragua, and got the fuck out of the country and never went back. And that is a freaking close call.
Oh, that's, he made the right call.
Yeah. Yep. That's, you gotta be, there's always adventurous things going on in foreign countries. So that, but I've never really, have you ever been to Mexico?
I did when I was a kid, though.
Yeah.
So it doesn't count.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I did go for a wedding too, but that doesn't
That
count.
was like a resort.
That was a resort.
Yeah.
But we went outside the resort, but as a group with bus and stuff.
Yeah.
So
you really got to go into the,
I didn't get
into the
airdropped
heart
into,
yeah. One of the trips I went to Colombia, we actually went to, which I can't remember if I told this before on the podcast or not, Pablo Escobar's actual neighborhood.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And that was pretty cool just to see. They've actually, because they loved Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
And the poor people in his neighborhood. And there's actually almost a shrine to him, a museum, he's a cult hero.
That Narcos show was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you watch that?
Yeah. I think I watched the first season of that.
Yeah.
We went on a tour with a former police SWAT member that supposedly was on the team that actually hunted down and killed Pablo Escobar. So he's actually got a tour where he takes you around and shows you where the gun battles were. Jeez. And you go to where Pablo Escobar was killed, and pretty crazy. Different countries have entirely different things going on than we think are normal in America. So it's a good reason to travel, to see what else is going on out there.
Always spicy.
Yep. Now, for our last call, Freddie, my pleas for somebody to call in a Dogman encounter have been fulfilled.
Rewarded.
Yes. So now I'm not sure, do you understand how many Dogman encounters are going on out there, Freddie? I don't know if you get the gravity.
It's just shy of 1.35 million, but probably
it
a
could
little
be
bit
over.
less.
It could be over. Yeah, over 1.3. Yeah. It's just, they're everywhere. They are everywhere. You can't shake a stick without Dogmen falling out. And
are these werewolves? Are you just using different terminology?
No, all right. So, and once I started listening to Dogman Encounter
you just trying
podcast,
to spice up werewolves?
No, they are separate things. All right. So a werewolf is somebody changing into a wolf, wolfman. Periodically. So they most of the time are fine. Then full moon hits, they change into a werewolf, go berserk.
Yeah.
There's another thing that is just a dogman, almost like Bigfoot, that just is constant. That's all he is. He's not going to change back into a human because he has been a dogman, always dogman. And
there's families of dog
people say. Yeah, people of that
Dogman has only one sex.
No, there's been. Well, I don't. They might have pronoun. It can be very complicated.
Did they self-replicate?
Yeah, no. They're supposedly some of the.
So there's some dog women.
Yeah. People have seen dog women. Not as prevalent as dog men. I've heard a story about somebody hearing a encounter with a juvenile dog man, dog boy, and dog girl. As a matter of fact, there's an entire podcast called Dogman Encounters that has literally got like 600.
Are these woods people?
You mean the dogmen or the people calling in? I think there's a high proportion of woods people calling in Dogman Encounters.
Is that where they hang out? The woods.
The people calling in,
the dog
or the dog? Oh, yeah, the dog people I think are at the woods. But they might be interdimensional. There's a lot of portal.
Right, that makes more sense.
You could get,
because I've heard of Mothman.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not normally usually in the woods. That's like that's in rural or urban areas sometimes with Mothman.
Well,
so I didn't know if Dogman.
I think dogmen are primarily with the wood folk.
Do they wear clothes?
No. That'd be ridiculous, Freddie.
Huh.
That would just be
They have tails?
Yeah, I think they basically look like they're very. I think they're
dogs
big.
that stand up.
Yeah, pretty much. But then they look.
They have hands.
Yeah, they've got hands.
Okay.
Yeah, they got hands. They're really, it's like a human body almost, but then a dog head
with the tail.
Yeah, with the tail. Yeah, but then they've also
furry. Is the whole thing furry?
I think the whole thing's furry. So it's sort of like you got to picture Bigfoot yet a dog.
Are their knees backwards?
Well, funny you should ask. So here.
Okay.
And
let's get my questions answered.
Yeah, so we're going to get all your questions answered by Marcus, who is calling in his extremely traumatic dogman encounter from Arkansas. Marcus, take it away.
You are looking for dogman stories, and I had an encounter, but others have seen them too. I'm still shook up, truth be told, 'cause it's the most terrifying encounter I have ever had. It was a rainy night, and I was sitting on my porch just watching the rain coming down, and all of a sudden I hear a strange scuffling off in the weeds off the side of the porch. And so I get up and I kind of tiptoe down to the opposite end of the porch where the shuffling is coming from the weeds, and I hear sniffling and snorting too. So I'm thinking, it's gonna be like maybe a regular dog, or maybe a cow got out from somewhere and wandered in my property. But no, when I get to that end of the porch, there, just out of the porch light, I see this massive thing, this thing that was probably 8 feet, 9 feet tall maybe. It was massive, this creature that had the face, the head of the dog, like a wolf or a Dogman, but the body of a man, like a large, muscular man, like a discus thrower in ancient Greece, like all muscular through the shoulders and then getting skinnier down to the legs, and the legs that were partially concealed by the weeds next to my house. They looked like sort of misshapen, almost like sort of bent the wrong way or something, but the creature, the dog man, was just standing there staring at me, and I was like filled with fear down to my bones where I couldn't even move. I was so in shock. and terrified as the dog man stared down at me with these sort of like reddish glowing eyes that I don't know if that was a reflection from the porch light or something, but those eyes almost like held me in places. It was sort of breathing through its mouth, rasping and almost growling, looking down at me. And I don't know how long it held me there in its gaze, but then eventually it said, "You got any cheese?" And I was so in shock, I can't really remember how long it took me to respond or even actually saying anything, but I must have just said, "What?" in shock, because the next thing it said to me was, "What ain't no type of cheese, motherfucker?" And then I must have just stared at him for another couple of seconds before saying, "What?" again. And then he got real angry, like angry, and said, "Say what again, motherfucker? Say what again, I dare you." And I didn't have any cheese. And so I just raised up my hands and in apology and shook my head, no, unable to speak because I was still in such shock. And the dog man just sort of looked at me, disappointed, and shook his head, and then he was gone, just darted off into the darkness faster than anything I'd seen move before. So now I always carry a slice of Velveeta in my pocket when I sit on the porch, because I do like sitting on my porch and listening to the rain, and I sure don't want to disappoint him if he comes back sniffing around looking for more cheese. This is Marcus from Arkansas.
Freddie, if people aren't inspired to leave a 5-star review at this point, I don't know what they are expecting from the internet.
We're approaching new levels here, Jim. Now, I have a much clearer version of what's actually going on here now that I've listened to the call. This is clearly a case of a chimera that has escaped from a military underground installation.
What is that? The Jekyll? No, what is the place? What is it? Plum Island.
Yeah, it's a DNA experiment.
Yeah,
chimeras.
All right.
Yeah,
what is it? Is it because he spoke?
Yeah, of course.
What do you think? Normal dogmen can't speak?
I don't think there is a normal dog man.
Yeah.
But, the normal, if you had to say normal dog man, would be part man and part dog.
Yeah.
Through genetic experimentation.
I think it's important to mention also to anyone that there's no vetting of these calls. So if you've got a dog man encounter, please call it in to add to Marcus's, because we'll
expound on Marcus's call, actually, if you can. But yeah, that's the cheese question.
Well, dogs love cheese.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
I was even thinking,
but the fact that it speaks English, it gives you a little couple clues there. And it might not be military; it just might be underground. Experiments. Now, there's a couple versions of where you can go with that, of who's doing those, but it's clearly a chimera.
Yeah. All right.
And
All
a
right.
dog version of the chimera, because
Yeah.
there's lots of versions of those.
Yeah.
Fish ones,
Yeah.
reptile ones.
Yeah.
There's bird ones.
Mothman, as you
Rat
already
Mothman,
mentioned.
yep.
Yeah. Well,
Lion people, cat people.
so are they making them and they're escaping? Or, like, is Marcus's Dogman, is that what he's supposed to be doing? Going around looking for cheese?
I don't think so.
No, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like that would be the main, like if you were a military and like if you were DARPA and spent like $500 million to create a Dogman, it doesn't feel like that you would want to.
It doesn't feel worth it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. It feels like that's not his highest and best use. So either he escaped, he's kind of gone rogue, or there's potentially an entirely different level of 4D chess that can't even fathom, Freddie, if that Dogman is specifically out there hunting for cheese.
Well, maybe it was an experiment where they let the dog chimera man encounter someone to see what it would do. And then now they have data, cheese data.
Yeah. Well, I could have told him that.
Well,
I mean, they didn't have to spend all that money on it if it's part dog. Like, that's what I was gonna suggest to Marcus, is that if he wants the Dogman to come back, all he's got to do is start to unwrap that slice of Velveeta when he's sitting on his porch, and dogs can hear that for like miles.
just the wrapper.
Yeah, just the wrapper.
Yeah.
Like that Dogman would come back in a flash.
Yeah.
So, if you got anything else you'd like to add on anything to do with cryptids, or let's see, what the topics we've covered are today are cryptids, bad things happening overseas.
We can go look for ourselves later on next month, Jim, in the Appalachians, if you like.
Oh, that's where the nice.
Well, there's lots of.
Yeah,
lots of
tons of dogmen.
Things that happen in the Appalachians, giants and blue people. And
I think we even had a call, one of the earlier shows, of remember the lady that met like a hillbilly wizard dude with frog goo
that
cured her sprained ankle?
Yep.
That happens all the time.
Yeah. So you have an opportunity.
Yeah.
We can go get some live stories from the Appalachians.
All right. I might have to do that. There are people out there with tons of great calls, which you just need to either call them in or share them with whatever friend you know has some good stories.
Yeah.
And we will get them on the air. And again, even if... they may not be as water airtight as Marcus's encounter, but even if it's something that is maybe a little out there,
we like out there.
Yeah, feel free to call that in. And again, this show is free. I'd like to reiterate that. Before you get compelled to leave a 1-star review, remember this is free. And so please tell somebody about the show. Leave a 5-star review, and remember to come back next week. And thank you very much for listening.
Please be aware that Your Best True Story podcast cannot attest to the validity of any story contained within. Additionally, all podcast hosts have failed numerous IQ tests and been legally deemed idiots by the judicial branch of the state of Florida. Therefore, please seek second opinions from licensed attorneys, doctors, CPAs, and/or ventriloquists prior to leaving your job to hunt Bigfoot, dragging a stake through your sleeping spouse's heart due to vampiric suspicion, snipping, slicing, dicing, or gargling any substance, attempting to drive your automobile off of the flat earth, or attempting to overthrow any government over suspicion that they are lizard aliens. The Your Best True Story podcast does not purport to offer legal, financial, or gynecological advice. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Please wear your seatbelt at all times and keep your hands inside your own compartment. If there is a sudden loss of pressure, you do have our permission to scream. The Your Best True Story podcast takes no responsibility for divorce, bankruptcy, possession by an ancient demonic entity, or brain herpes. For everything else, we still take no responsibility, but we do feel very bad about it.
You got a crazy-ass true story to tell. It could be funny, or thrilling, or creepy as hell. And when you speak, surely none will make a sound. And the world's going breathless when your true story comes around. Oh, hear the crazy bullshit flying. Just one more maybe true story before we're dying. Yet be warned, surely not all stories will be treated the same. So don't blame us if your tale about grandma's cookies is lame. The only way to ensure you could possibly win a buck is to make sure that story of yours don't suck. So instead of yawns, go ahead and tell us how that Bigfoot or werewolf drowned, and then hear the world go breathless when your true story comes around. You'll hear the crazy bullshit flying. Just one more maybe true story before we're dying. Yet be warned, surely not all stories will be treated the same. So don't blame us if your tale about your grandma's cookies is lame.